Hello and welcome to Scenario Analysis. In the sea of uncertainty, the pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change, and the realist adjusts the sails. If you like, that would be William Arthur Ward's approach to scenario analysis. So today we are examining scenario analysis. In research, uncertainty isn't a problem. It is an opportunity. Scenario analysis helps you prepare for a range of possible futures, not just one forecasted path. In this video, we'll break down what scenario analysis is, why it matters for researchers, and how to conduct it effectively. So, what is scenario analysis? Scenario analysis is a method used to explore and prepare for multiple plausible futures. It can help with forecasting, but it's different in the sense that forecasting tries to predict the most likely outcome. Scenario analysis is about exploring what could happen, especially when dealing with uncertainty or complex systems. It originated in military planning and energy policy, but is now used widely across fields like economics, climate research, business strategy, and even public health. For researchers or even managers, scenario analysis adds strategic depth and allows you to test how robust your findings or assertions are under different conditions, identify potential risks or opportunities in different scenarios, and justify recommendations with clear contingency planning. For example, a hotelier might examine how a particular strategy performs under scenarios of high versus low economic growth. A climate researcher might test models under multiple emission curves. The main components of scenario analysis are driving forces, critical uncertainties, scenario framework, and narrative development. In driving forces, we have micro-level trends, technological, social, environmental, or economic, that shape the context of your research. You can use a pastel approach here if you like. In critical uncertainties, the key drivers that are highly uncertain, but also highly influential, can help. These form the axis of your scenario matrix. In scenario framework, we use a 2x2 matrix to map 4 scenarios based on the 2 most critical uncertainties. See the same example at the beginning of this video. It was meant to be a little bit of a joke, but I shall give you proper examples also drawn from research shortly. In narrative development, each scenario becomes a story, a narrative world with internal logic. These narratives are qualitative, but you can overlay quantitative models as needed. Scenario analysis, for example, in sustainability, is a strategic tool that is used to explore how different future conditions, such as changes in climate, resource availability, policy, or societal behavior, might affect environmental, social, and economic outcomes. Instead of trying to predict a single future, it creates multiple plausible scenarios. For example, high emissions versus low emissions. These help to assess the resilience of sustainability strategies or policies. For example, a researcher might analyze how different levels of global cooperation and carbon pricing might affect renewable strategy energy adoption by 2050. In sustainability, scenario analysis supports long-term planning, risk management, and robust decision-making in the face of deep uncertainty. If we take risk management as an example, scenario analysis there is a technique used to evaluate how different future events or conditions, especially adverse conditions, could impact an organization, a system, or a project. Instead of focusing on a single forecast, again, we explore a range of possible scenarios. Things like economic downturn, a natural disaster, and we try to assess how risk might materialize and what the potential consequences could be. In practice, this allows us to identify vulnerabilities and critical risk exposures. It tests the resilience of strategies or systems under stress. It informs contingency planning and risk mitigation strategies. It's widely used in finance, insurance, public health, and disaster planning to help prepare for a low probability but high impact events. If we take hospitality management as an example, scenario analysis can be used as a planning tool to explore how different future conditions, such as shifts in tourist demand, economic changes, public health crisis, or technology trends, could impact our operations or our revenue. Again, instead of relying on a single forecast, we try to have different scenarios to look at potential outcomes and adapt our strategies. In hospitality, scenario analysis helps us plan for fluctuations in occupancy and revenue, prepare for staffing or supply chain challenges, design flexible pricing or marketing and service strategies that can perform well across different futures. It supports resilient decision-making in a highly dynamic and sensitive industry. Now let's look at a couple of examples of 2x2 matrices from various research papers. Here is a scenario matrix highlighting the main characteristics of 4 plausible alternative futures, arising from the combination of 2 axes describing key uncertainties regarding the future development of Transylvania. The authors say it's modified from Hatchback of 2014. This particular one is from the role of scenarios in fostering collective action for sustainable development, lessons from Central Romania. Marta Nieto Romero is the main author. Pause the video and study this matrix. Here's another one. The future of luxury, mega drivers, new faces and scenarios. This one comes from a couple of colleagues of mine. Ian Yeoman and Una McMahon are the key authors. Again, pause for a bit and study the matrix. And finally, here is another slight different approach whereby the 2x2 matrix is becoming a grid. This one comes from Big Bang Partnership. If you put the authors or the keywords, you can find those online and you can find the full papers from the research that I shared earlier. Now, how to use scenario analysis in your management report or research project or paper. You can integrate scenario analysis into your research into 2 main ways. The methodology section, by describing how you constructed the scenarios, what data, frameworks, or expert input you used, or in the discussion section, use the scenarios to stress test your findings. Ask, does my conclusion still hold under scenario B? What about scenario C, etc. This adds intellectual rigor and demonstrates that your recommendations are resilient and not overly dependent on a single projections. Now, here are my 10 top tips for scenario analysis in any kind of research. Number 1, define the focal question clearly and begin with a specific research relevant question like, how will urban mobility change under different energy policies by 2040? A vague question may lead to vague scenarios. Number 2, identify key drivers systematically. Use PESTLE as a tool, or STEEP, if you like, framework to scan the external environments and list potential drivers of change. Number 3, distinguish between trends and uncertainties. Not everything is uncertain. Separate known trends, for example, aging population, from critical uncertainties, such as political stability or AI adoption rate. Number 4, choose 2 high impact, high uncertainty drivers. Plot these as axes in a 2x2 matrix. This gives you 4 coherent but constructing future scenarios, the sweet spot for robust exploration. Number 5, build internally consistent narratives. Each scenario must feel like a plausible world. Avoid contradictions. If one scenario assumes a tech breakthrough, ensure the social and economic conditions align with that. Number 6, use both qualitative and quantitative data if you can. Combine narrative scenarios with numbers where possible. Model the impact of scenario using simulations, statistical models, or sensitivity analysis. Number 7, engage stakeholders or experts. Even in academic research, expert interviews, workshop, or Delphi techniques can enrich your scenario development with practical insight and reduce personal bias. 8, avoid bias towards the most likely. The goal is not to predict the future, but to prepare for multiple plausible futures. Give each scenario equal analytical weight, even the uncomfortable scenarios. Number 9, test policy or strategy options across scenarios. Use scenarios to evaluate how recommendations perform under different conditions. Look for strategies that are robust. They work reasonably well across all futures. And number 10, be transparent in your methodology. Explain how you selected the drivers, build narratives, and assess the implications. This builds academic credibility and allows others to reproduce or challenge your work. So in conclusion, scenario analysis invites you to think beyond the obvious. It's not about knowing the future, it's about being ready for whatever future arrives. So if you have found this useful, give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe for more research and management tools and techniques. Good luck and see you around.